what do you know? It's 6:30.
Is it right on time?
Yeah,
All
right on time.
Well, it's about time for us to get started then.
Hey, that worked out really well. We are live, Mr. Brown.
Awesome. Hey, everybody. Good to see you. I know we're going to have some folks joining us over the next few minutes. Everything good?
Oh, yeah, we are
We're
good
getting
to
there?
go.
Okay.
We are good to go.
So thank you guys for joining us tonight. And if you're watching this later than live, thank you for coming back and watching it. Appreciate that. Love for you guys. I think we say this every single time, but we really would love for you to just tell us, hey, I'm here, I'm watching, good to see you guys.
What I really love is the life update. I'm sitting next to my cat with some ramen noodles. All the lights are off except for Unscripted.
What a magical night, man.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Got
anyway.
the candles going. Wow. Thank you for inviting us into
that experience. Yeah.
moment with y'all.
So anyway, glad to be with you guys. Shoot us a quick thumbs up, quick hello, wave to us. Hey guys. We're excited to be with you again tonight. This is episode 41, I believe, of Unscripted.
41.
And, yeah.
41.
Yeah.
Look at us.
Yeah, I know. And
Who would have thought?
you know, we're excited to be talking about what we're going to talk about tonight. So I don't know, you know, if we just want to just jump right into it, because there's a lot of stuff that we
there is a lot.
about, so.
I mean, you guys know Marshall and I, unfortunately, like maybe it's fortunate for our jobs or whatever, but we can talk about, I feel like, nothing for a long time.
Oh, sure.
So just ask us about the Greek interpretations, whatever.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Or, you know, favorite, I don't know, soft drink or something. We'll go for a while.
Yeah.
You know.
You guys want to let's not.
Ooh, I did hear a question. This has nothing to do with what we're talking about tonight.
Look at us.
We're gonna have to answer this at some point though,
Okay,
just
go for
for
it.
the fun of it. No, I don't want to do it tonight because it'll take too long. But a question on the radio yesterday was like, if you were going, if somebody landed on a spaceship from outer space, came down to this planet, and like wanted to know explain to me what rock and roll is, and you could only use a song to kind of like, hey, listen to this. This kind of epitomizes rock and roll. And like, what would be your go-to?
Well, I feel like you would have a better answer than me.
Well, I'm just saying, like, I know you and I would have
man.
completely different answers. Because what we defined as like, you know, good music and rock and roll and stuff.
Yeah.
I think
even just rock and roll,
but it's not
different.
it's not the same go-to for either one of us.
Nope.
Because I'm going to lean more towards like, you know,
straight up 80s.
Yeah.
Let me guess, AC/DC or like Motley Crue or
probably maybe a hair band or two.
What about y'all?
Know?
What do you guys think? So,
nothing
to do with it at all.
What we're talking about tonight, but it
Didn't
was
we
a
just
really
say-
interesting question.
So we had
man.
a lot to talk about, right?
Yeah, we did.
Motley
Yes.
Crue.
How do you define rock and roll through a song? So, or do you go to like, you know, the greatest bands of all time?
That's kind of,
You know, do you go like Beatles or Rolling Stones or, you know, something like that?
Yeah.
Or do you do something more like you could, I know like you're a really big fan of, let's say, the Avett Brothers. But that doesn't really define rock and roll.
Nah.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
is that
like,
even,
if you try to, not just music in general or popular music, but like we had this thing called rock and roll. But if you go back, you know, in the 50s and 60s and stuff, it's a little lighter than
too.
like AC/DC. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I think it depends too. And this is taking, Ashton says, I love rock and roll. Appreciate that, kid. You know, what are we anticipating the alien to do? Be like, okay, and then take off. It's like, I'll say whatever. And
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
leave. It's fine.
Anyway, it was a really interesting conversation that I was listening to two guys on the radio have, and I started thinking about it. I was like, huh, what would I pick? What, you know?
Welcome to the Bobby Bones Show, baby.
Yes, he's
Featuring
country. He's
Marsh Brown.
He's country, so that doesn't count. So anyway, all right, let's ask a question from you guys tonight. And I want to hear your answer as well, but I want you guys to think about something. We want you guys to think about something that that you had to like go into some kind of training for ahead of time, or you know, there was kind of a either a training process or kind of a difficult preparation ahead of time. And it could be anything. It could be like you might have had, you know, a job that you had to go to, and you had to go through a whole bunch of training before you did it. Military training before, you know, basic training before you go to military service, or, you know, I knew guys, I don't even know the process nowadays, but the guys that I knew back in the day would like go to these training classes for months to take the CPA exam to be an accountant, you know, certified accountant. So what would be something that you personally have experienced that you had to do a lot of training for ahead of time?
Solid.
What's yours?
Man, I don't know. Oh, the first thing that comes to mind is like college stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm here in training so that I can actually do the stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm, learning about all this so that I can actually do the job later. But I think in a more practical sense, there's like there's like the Tough Mudder stuff. Me and a couple of the teens we run Conquer the Gauntlet. And so it's like a 4 mile.
But do you train for that?
Outdoor course.
Or
Well,
do you just go do it?
sometimes.
Okay.
Sometimes I train for that.
Yeah.
If I don't want to hurt afterwards, I
You
train
take
for that.
you take teenagers up on a mountain in the summer.
Oh yeah. Oh,
And
train
you
for
tell
that.
people ahead of time, like,
For sure.
Don't just show up and go, yeah, I got this.
Yeah.
Like, you need to actually.
Yeah,
train
even
a
if
little
you're
bit.
in shape, like let's do some evaluations and like make sure like what is in shape, because in shape means a lot of different things to
Right.
a lot of different people.
Right.
In shape to summit a 14,000-foot mountain in a couple of days, that's a little different.
That's a little different,
Yeah,
for
yeah,
sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
That's a good thought. That's a good
Yeah.
thought, because you had to do the same thing because you went with us a couple years ago.
Yeah, and I honestly didn't train ahead of time nearly as much as I should have because it was kind of hard on me.
Marshall didn't show it though. I mean, for real, I just maybe it was deep down.
Yeah, which is something that my son said ahead of time that I was going to do was not allow myself to be perceived as struggling, even if I was
Staring
which I
down
was.
at your shoes and,
Yes.
and squealing a little bit.
That's right.
Cade saying marriage, but then he said laugh out loud after that. And he said the counselors that we had
I
were
mean,
brutal.
best money can buy. I mean, because we did it for free. So,
There it is.
Yeah.
There it is.
Um,
Phyllis is saying she had to attend and pass the FAA certification course whenever she worked at Ozark Aircraft.
Oh wow.
Systems.
Yeah. That would
Intense
take a lot
for
of training.
sure.
I would
Oh,
think so. Yeah.
They don't just let any Joe Schmo up there.
Unless
Hope
somebody on
not.
the street go, hey, help land these planes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you went through some training for that. I think mine would just be like back in besides, climbing a mountain. I remember, playing high school basketball, and even like I was in good shape in and out of season, back in those days, not now.
Get out.
But the training that you go through, for whatever your sport season was,
To be able to play the sport.
yeah,
In the middle.
because it was a combination of like learn these skills, learn these plays, but also let's get in shape for this too. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that was some difficulty there. So
Fun.
anyway, we want to be thinking about that. Like what's some difficult circumstances that you had to go through with kind of a goal in mind. Like it's not just, hey, I'm going to randomly punish myself or go through something difficult, but I really, there's a reason for this, and I'm moving towards something or have a goal in mind.
Yeah.
And be thinking about that as we kind of jump back into what we've been talking about out of 2 Peter chapter 1. So if you got your Bibles, your Bible apps, go ahead and turn to 2 Peter chapter 1. And look with us again. We've been talking about this life that Peter says God has already given us, or given us what we need to experience it, and this divine nature that we can have here in this life now.
Partakers of the divine nature.
Yeah,
So
and,
cool.
and experience now what's also being experienced in heaven. And then going through these different ingredients. I want to remind everybody, because in case you haven't been a part of this study with us from the beginning a few weeks ago, why Brandon and I keep calling them ingredients. And we were talking about this word when Peter keeps saying, add this and add this and add this. It would be similar to adding ingredients to a mixture of some kind, or something, whether you're baking a cake, or I think you had a smoothie that night,
Yeah.
just we're adding things to it that all blend together to, make this
Yeah.
full creation or whatever it is that you're making.
In the very first week, we talked about faith and how it's kind of like chicken spaghetti. Like, okay, you've got a lot of things in chicken spaghetti, but chicken.
Yeah.
Like, here we go.
You need that.
This is the big thing.
Right.
Okay. And then you're folding the spaghetti in, you're folding the sauce, you're
Mhm.
folding the peppers, you're folding the mushrooms, and all of these things. So that's kind of what.
And they're all necessary,
Exactly.
but they all have to kind of blend together, and they all kind of rely on each other,
Mhm.
and
So the good life is kind of like that.
right. I'm
All
adding these
together.
things, but not just like a checklist. I'm adding them in because each one of them enhances what I've already,
That's right.
kind of put into this. Okay.
Yeah.
So last week we talked about self-control. If you missed that, I invite you to go back and watch that discussion
That was
that we
cool.
had.
It was a cool discussion.
It was
Enjoyed
it was fun to talk about. So tonight we're looking at what Peter says to add next, and that's in 1 Peter chapter 2 Peter. I said 1 Peter a minute ago. 2 Peter chapter 1.
Verse 6.
Yeah, we're in verse 6. So just going back through the list in verse 5, he says, add your faith, goodness, to goodness, knowledge, to knowledge, self-control, and to self-control, perseverance. And so that's what we're going to talk about tonight, is perseverance. And so what I'd love for you guys to do, either on your phones, your computers, whatever you're watching in right now, I'd love for you to tell it, like, define perseverance. Like, don't go on Google or Merriam-Webster or whatever else. Just like when you hear perseverance, I feel like it's a fairly common word that we've all heard at some point in our lives. What does that mean? What comes to mind? Or maybe it's a person that comes to mind, or
What's
maybe
the
it's a
image,
circumstance.
a movie.
Yeah. Definition. Yeah. Sing from a movie, whatever it is. What do you think of when you think of perseverance? What do you think of? I'm asking you now. Like, let's put you on the spot while we're waiting to hear from you. Let's give our
my mind goes to running, and I mean, I know we talked about like hiking and stuff like that a second ago, but at least that's kind of from my context, especially growing up in high school and all of that. It was like, you got to persevere, you got to keep going, you got to keep pushing, you got to keep this pace or whatever. And so I think an image of running comes, but not a particular person or like a movie or anything like that.
So okay. Well, there would be a lot of different answers. The one that came fresh to my mind, honestly, just now when I started thinking about this question, last night, just on TV, I've seen it multiple times on TV, but the movie Unbroken was on. You ever seen the movie Unbroken?
Yeah.
Louis Zamperini or something like that?
I want to say Zamboni, but that's definitely
that's not it. I think it's anyway, won't go through the whole movie plot, but basically, a guy that was an Olympic level runner that ends up in a Japanese prison camp in World War II, and just the stuff that he had to go through, like the beatings, the conditions that he was living in, lack of food, all those kinds of things. And like, I mean, you just had to see the movie, but just
the poster, I mean, like the poster for the movie, you think just that kind of condenses it, is him holding a railroad tie or a railroad
up above his head,
and he's like crying because he's fighting it so bad. You're like,
and they're like, and the thing is, he's not allowed to let it drop. And I mean, you can imagine how exhausted his arms would be, and he's still
awesome
persevering
movie.
through that.
Awesome movie, inspirational, and he's a Christian too, which is really cool. So good for a lot of
things. Okay, any answers from anybody else?
We've got James 1:12. Look at Jerry. Hey, we're gonna talk about that later, man. That's some stuff we're gonna do. Yeah, I totally feel that. James is all about that, especially in the first chapter.
Yeah, he mentions it.
He mentions it like maybe 5 or 6 times within the first half of the first chapter.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
I feel that. Ashton says, not giving up on the face of adversity. There you go.
Yep.
Ooh.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, that kind of fits into what perseverance actually means as far as like a definition.
And what Peter's talking about.
Yeah, Greek understanding of what that looks like.
Yeah, for sure. So, Brandon already mentioned we like ancient Greek and Hebrew words. So if you go back to the ancient Greek language that this was originally written in, it's a combination of a couple of things, or it's a word.
It's compound.
Yeah, it comes from the Greek word to remain, like I'm staying here, but then it has a prefix on the front of it, and that prefix means under. So literally, this word that Peter uses here is to remain under something.
Side note.
Yeah.
It's Greek and Hebrew, man. I don't know any Hebrew or anything. Maybe just, a word here or there. And you and I know a lot more Greek than I do. But I think it's cool. Just whenever you get into the Greek and see this word like perseverance, we both can think of other things, but then here you go. And it's just like coloring it in a little bit. Like perseverance is kind of like this coloring book that doesn't have colors. But then when you read the Greek, it's to remain under, and it brings, I think, a little bit more life and a little bit more color.
Yeah,
which is why going to, the original stuff is so important. But that's
no, I think that's exactly it. It's not just like I'm going to bide my time until this is over with. Yeah. There is something that I am underneath. There is something that may be crushing me at the moment, or that I'm trying to lift off of myself or even somebody else or whatever. There's something that I'm underneath, and I'm either gonna I'm either gonna keep staying underneath it until it's gone, or what? Like, I'm not walking away from it.
Yeah. And
I'm not going to let it crush me either.
Yeah. So perseverance is I'm remaining underweight, not allowing it to crush me.
Yeah.
Or even when I'm crushed a little, I'm still, so that same kind of view of unbreakable, what we're talking about.
The unbroken thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
But here's the key thing about what Cade say.
He says the same thing as far as talking about Moses during the first battle, holding up his arms.
And his arms started getting tired, and somebody else you're right. Yeah. Persevering through that.
Mm-hmm. But
the key thing about it to me is if I'm underneath something and I'm remaining under it, that means it's my choice to do that. Like I'm not chained underneath it. I am choosing to stay under this until I get past it or whatever, you know?
Because I think that there's a difference between somebody that does it on their own, that's perseverance. But I mean, think about a runner that's on a treadmill that somebody is like, you have to stay on here. And they wouldn't look at that person that is being forced and say, look at the perseverance of that guy.
Yeah.
It would be, look at the abuse of this person. That I like that, like a self-choice.
Right. And so going back to, you know, when you take teenagers up a mountain, you know, you're going up 14,000 feet, you get to a certain point and you get to a certain point and you could literally, if you wanted to, go, you know what, I'm out. I'm either heading back down or I'm stopping right here.
And with every step, it is a decision, right? It is a decision.
So perseverance means like it is a conscious choice. I'm going to continue to remain under this until I get past it.
Yeah. I think it's cool too, because the NIV says perseverance and the ESV says steadfastness. But I mean, essentially they're the same thing, but talking about a burden that can crush you, but it's something that you are pushing back at. It's something you are not allowing to conquer you, at least completely.
Right.
So I think that's cool.
Yeah.
So
the other thing that I thought of, and you know, you and I were talking about this earlier, was just I'm really not much of an MMA sports person.
Small doses. That's for me.
Mixed martial arts, if you don't know what that is, the guys that get in the cage and kick and hit each other and wrestle each other to the ground and all that. I'm just not like, I'm not a fan. Like I don't hate it, but I'm not really
small doses. I think for me.
I'm not that up on it, but there's this whole part of that process of like, you know, you get a guy in a certain hold and like, if you got like your arm around my throat and I can't breathe and I can't move, then I can tap out. And it's my choice. I can either keep grappling and keep fighting, or I can be like,
I can say I've had enough.
Yeah.
I've had enough.
And so again, that's I can either remain under that burden or I can tap out and say, okay, I'm done. You know, and it comes down to my choice. And I think that's one of the key things about perseverance that we see throughout Scripture. And I think what Peter's getting at here is like, there's burdens that are going to happen sometimes that I have no control over a lot of times. And the question is, am I going to push through it or am I going to walk away?
Right.
You know?
So I think in this discussion too, that's when we have to start asking ourselves. I mean, looking at Peter and the way that he goes through all this, I think that's when we have to start asking ourselves, and you guys by all means do this because you guys have done a good job already. What are some times when you have had to stay under, you know, persevere through this life?
Yeah.
So sometimes when maybe it felt like things were crushing in, but you held your ground, you held the burden up, or are continuing to hold up the burden, maybe even for longer than you thought. So go ahead and drop those in, because like we said, whenever you drop them in, that helps us see like with the things that you've gone through too. But
it gives us a clearer picture too.
Yeah. Do you have any one thing in particular that you could think of for that? Something that you had to stay under?
Well, okay. So, it's hard for me to I want to be careful about how I share this, because I'm thinking the only thing that's coming to my mind, seriously, the only thing that's coming to mind right now is times when I've had to deal with like criticism.
Oh yeah.
And maybe even undue criticism, you know, like getting a lot of negative comments either about me or directed directly to me, and they may not even be accurate, and just choosing to go ahead and push through that and go, okay, I'm going to keep doing what I know I should be doing, even though I could very easily walk away from this and not deal with this anymore. And like, that just came to mind. I don't like,
but that's real though.
Yeah.
Right.
For sure.
I'm not a good taker of criticism.
Nobody is.
I'm really not.
Nobody likes it.
Yeah. If anybody is, like, let me know. Like,
what's the secret? Yeah,
how you do that better?
So that's one that came off the top of my head.
Yeah, because it's something where you have to make a decision. I think that's what all of these things are. You know, if you guys are thinking of yours, it's an active decision between, am I going to throw up my hands and say I'm done, or will I continue to push through? Yeah. And sometimes, even for the same circumstance, you have to make that decision a couple of times. Because I mean, with the criticism and stuff, I know that's not like oh yeah, I'm just going to push through and make that decision. That's, at least for me, those things sit on me for a little while. And we're talking about this weight coming down. They sit on me for a little while, and I have to actively make the decision. Kind of like what we talked about last week, taking our thoughts captive, self-control and stuff. I have to actively say, no, I'm gonna keep going.
Yeah.
I'll keep pushing.
I think it's some
I like that a
people,
lot.
recently that have shared, and I'll guard their request, but just, tough things are going on in their lives or in their families' lives. And just going, okay, I don't even know if I want to hold on to this faith. I keep praying for these things to go away or to be dealt with. And I feel like as soon as I get past this, here comes this.
Yeah.
So,
Well, yeah, I mean, that's real though.
It
I mean,
is.
especially what, with you're struggling with your faith and struggling to understand God's motives in the middle of it. And does God really have me?
yeah.
And actively making decisions of, you know what, I'm going to keep pushing through.
Yeah.
Or
I don't see the point right now, or I don't see the end of this, but I'm going to keep going anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess the big question for us too, as we're reading 2 Peter, is why I'm talking about this, ingredients to
this godly life,
be partakers
this
in
divine nature,
this divine nature, this heaven on earth of we partake. And he says, here's an ingredient that we can fold into it. And he says, perseverance is a part of that. And what I love about the series, and we shared before, is that there's so much good context with Peter of it's not just like, yeah, here's like why perseverance matters. It's like, well, let's look at Peter's life and see where it matters the most.
Yeah.
And where he learned the fact that this isn't a random list. Perseverance is something that he, where do we,
so what do you see?
that?
What do you see in Peter's experience as far as like perseverance?
Yeah, I think it's easy. You and I talked about this a little bit before. It's easier for us to see, maybe Peter's failures with those things. And especially, I mean, look at this list, you know, I feel like the reasons that these things are on the list is because this is stuff that Peter's like, hey, have you read my life? Have you read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, especially Mark, where he just kind of, his whole life is on display.
Yeah.
He's like, these are all the times that I failed. Yeah. So now here's what I'm coming up with.
Look what I've learned. How important this is.
I mean, you can look at, like just the denial of Jesus. Mm-hmm. And where he says, hey, I am going to be with you till the end. Yeah. I will take a sword for you. I would die before. And then a little servant girl comes up and says, hey, you have the same accent as him. He's like,
yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. And then the cousin of the guy whose ear he cut off goes, I think I saw you in the garden. He's like,
nah. Oh, so here's
I don't even know the guy.
Talk about a little, this guy isn't lifting very much. This is a little bit of weight, a little bit of pressure.
Yeah.
He says,
he's already walking away. I will not remain under this anymore.
Yeah.
And he walks away from it.
But on the other side there, I mean, with your and I's thoughts before all this, I mean, there are so many times that Peter displays real steadfastness, real perseverance.
That's true. For sure.
And that's what I like about Peter too, is that, there are some failures, but man, there are some good moments, especially in my mind, especially post Jesus's death. Mm-hmm. Because here we go, Jesus dies, and then you've got, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Jesus dies and then rises back into heaven, and then you've got Acts, and Peter takes the limelight, before Paul. So the first half of Acts, it's Peter. Mm-hmm. He's the leader of the church. He's the spokesperson for the apostles. He's the guy that's leading this movement. Yeah. And so I think from there, I mean, there's a lot of times that we can see.
Yeah, I can think of right off the bat when he's preaching the sermon, he and John get arrested, and they basically get their lives threatened and said, do not talk about Jesus anymore. And he's like, I'm going to. Just like, all right.
Well, yeah. Here's the deal. We'll throw you in prison again, and it might be worse next time. We actually murdered your boss. Yeah. Murdered your leader. Yeah. So remember, this is also on the table. Yeah. And
then a little bit later, like James actually does get killed. He gets his head cut off, and then they arrest Peter. And he's got to be thinking, okay,
this is my time.
How devastating would it be that one of your best friends from growing up has been killed in this way?
For preaching the
gospel. And now you're preaching the gospel. They've already warned you once. Same guys. Yeah. And now they got you again. you know? And he's like, yeah, okay, bring it. Which is a complete pendulum swing from when he was around the fire, you know, before the crucifixion. So I think, to your point, that's why it's important for Peter is not just because he's failed at it, but also because he's seen what good comes from it when you actually do. Yeah. When you actually do hold on to your faith and persevere through the difficult circumstances.
I like that. He's learned from his failures, but at the same time, here's something that Peter actually displayed very well for us. And I'm glad that we have all that in Acts 2. And there's more times, man. Just read the first, 12, 13 chapters of Acts. It's great. Yeah. Yeah. He's there displaying what that looks like.
But then he also, I mean, he watched it be modeled for him by the ultimate example of perseverance.
Exactly.
You know,
Exactly.
I mean, if you think about Jesus, holy cow! I mean, I don't want to say, I don't want to trivialize the cross, the treatment that Jesus went through before ever getting to the cross, and then the cross itself, and then the whole, even just the spiritual battle that's taking place, taking on all of our sin and being separated from God, and even just the emotional battle of just like really dealing with all of that completely on his own.
Yeah.
And he went through all that, you know, honest enough beforehand to go, God, I'm really not for sure that I actually want to do this, but okay. And push through, you know? So that's obviously an example of perseverance, but you can see it in other aspects, you know, of his life. I mean, how many times did people either try to kill him before, you know, the whole crucifixion time?
Yeah.
How many times did he have to argue with people about different things
and clarify, like, hey,
Yeah.
this is stuff that I've told you, and they're like, oh, you're a demon.
Yeah.
Whoa,
What? Yeah.
Or, you know, hey, I'm gonna tell his disciples 3 times. This is Mark chapter 8, telling his disciples 3 different times, this is exactly what's gonna happen to me, and they're like, I don't really.
What does he mean? Anybody know what he means? I don't know what he means.
Yeah. And then
Well, there's one time. Okay, so I think it's in Mark chapter 8 when he's already fed 5,000 people with, like, you know, a sack lunch, and then he feeds 4,000 people at a separate time, again with a very small amount of food, and then right after that, these religious leaders come out and go, "Hey, do something that proves you're the Son of God." And
we want to know.
He's just like, seriously? And like Scripture even says there in Mark chapter 8, Jesus sighed deeply, and it's like this groan of like, oh, no, I'm not going to give you a sign, you know, but just like how much he had to persevere through
just to
tolerating
get his
us. Yeah.
Just to get his message
just
across.
to deal with the world that he was dealing with.
And because he's human, he's making these same decisions that we're talking about making with perseverance too, of can I just give up? Like, this is obviously not working for the disciples. It's obviously not working for, these are the close dudes. This is obviously not working for the crowds. They're about to kill me. Like, can I just go back to being a carpenter's son?
Yeah.
And just doing.
Or, you know, let's just write this off and I'll head back to heaven. I'm out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tapping out.
I mean, you know, to trivialize it and stuff, he really can say like, all right, let's go. And then rises back into heaven. He can just be done.
Yeah.
But
he persevered.
Yeah.
He remained under that burden the whole time.
And I don't think that's something that we can fully understand too, because this is a man that's facing death, that has every opportunity, just like the people are mocking him when he's on the cross, of like, hey, if you really are the Son of God, and so they're challenging who he says he is, if you really are the Son of God, then just ask the angels to come and save you. It's fine.
Yeah.
And the perseverance part is that, well, wonder, I mean, that's a temptation. Like, I really could do that.
Yeah.
I really could bring myself down from the cross right now and display to them like, hey,
if you want me to prove it, I can.
Yeah. But he realizing that, no, this is an opportunity, not an opportunity. This is the moment in history where he is saving humanity and he's taking us.
Yeah.
He decides, no, I'm going to push through.
Yeah.
I'm going to push back.
Yeah.
And then push those temptations aside and keep going.
Isn't that amazing?
I want to be like that.
And that's what, you know, I think that's what Peter got to obviously witness firsthand.
Yeah.
And so I think this, you know, that's part of why he mentions it here in this list. Like, this is vital. This is, you know, again, all these different ingredients are
in tandem, working together.
Yeah. But they need each other too.
Yeah.
Like, I've got to have faith.
It's got to have the underlying.
But what does it matter if I say I believe, if I don't actually put that into action and trust, even in the middle of hardships, I'm going to get on the other side of this.
Yeah.
I can be a good person, but what does it matter just doing some good things if I don't believe in somebody who's empowering me to do those things? And what does it matter if I'm not going to keep doing the good things, even when people ridicule me for it or criticize me for it or don't appreciate it? I need to have self-control. But if I'm not going to part of the self-control is me choosing to go ahead and persevere instead of what I naturally want to do and give up or retaliate or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's all these different things that Peter, again, is saying this all has to combine together, that he's either failed at, learned how to do, or watched Jesus modeled for him.
Yeah. And I mean, he talks about that in other places too, because you and I were talking earlier about 1 Peter chapter 3 and verse 13. He's saying like, now who is there to harm you if you're zealous for what's good? So he's saying, hey, nobody's going to hurt you if you're doing good
if you're
things.
doing the right thing, who's going to bother you? Nobody's going to bother you if you're doing the right thing.
But even if you do, because he's looking back at Jesus and stuff too. Here's the man who did everything right, and he got killed.
Yeah.
But even if you should suffer for righteousness' sake, you'll be blessed. So have no fear of them or be troubled. He's saying, man, let's just keep on holding the weight.
Yeah.
You've got it. Let's keep pushing through.
Keep doing good stuff, even if you don't get anything in return for it.
Yeah.
Which is, man, that is so foreign to us. Like anything that I do, there needs to be a purpose behind it. I need to be patted on the back for it. I need something for you to do something in return. Scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, kind of thing. And Peter's like, no, sometimes. I mean, who's going to? How bad would that be? But it might happen, and sometimes, you're going to be mistreated, and you're not going to deserve it. Yeah. And there's nothing really to do about it, I think, except push through it.
Yeah. And I think he kind of alludes to that too, of like, there's going to be times when we're sitting under here, we're remaining under, right, these things. And we ask ourselves like, what? Like, why? Can we just like, not that I want to be done with it, but like I'm doing everything that, God wants me to do. I'm trying to be a good person. But more than that, I'm trying to be like Jesus. I'm trying to be the image of God to this world that needs it.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here and it gets heavier and heavier and heavier. And we're like, God, can you just take it just a little bit? And I think that's, you get into, obviously, James chapter 1, this is where I think Jerry was kind of alluding to a little bit, but in James chapter 1, where we're talking about steadfastness, we're talking about perseverance, and he says, I want you to, this is James, the brother of Jesus, so somebody else that had very, very close connections to who, the half brother of Jesus, you can't really get closer than that.
Yeah.
But he says, man, count it all joy, my brothers, whenever you meet trials of various kinds. Count it whenever you're about to be crushed by the railroad tie that you're holding above, count it as joy. Yeah. Why? Because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance, produces steadfastness.
Yeah.
And let steadfastness have its full effect. So, man, feel the full brunt of that railroad tie that's sitting up on top of you, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing.
Yeah.
So he says that, man, these trials and stuff, they produce steadfastness so that we can have a perfect and complete life.
Yeah.
Whoa.
So I can be fully complete in this divine nature, if you want to tie it back to what Peter was talking about.
So it's almost like
the experience.
We need to hold that.
Yeah.
We need to recognize the fact that every single one of us is going to needs to persevere because it's expected and because it makes us more complete and perfect into this chicken spaghetti that we're getting together.
And I do, we're going to wrap up here in just a second. I kind of as a side note, we are not, and Peter's not saying this, we're not saying this, that you or we have to, we're not allowed to ask for help. If there are burdens, it is up to me to deal with this by myself, and no way in this world, it's almost a lack of faith if I either share that with somebody else or ask for help with it. That's not what we're saying at all. It's not what Peter's saying here
at all. It's not what the Bible teaches either.
Right. And this is when we talk about this remaining under something, and I like, you keep using the word or the phrase, push back. I'm going to push through this. I'm going to push against whatever this hardship is. But man, sometimes I need somebody else to stand under there with me until I can get on the other side of it, but I don't want anybody to hear us tonight say, hey man, any problem that's in your life, just suck it up and deal with it by yourself. That's not what we're saying at all. We're just saying, and what I think Peter's saying is, don't walk away from your faith. Don't walk away from this life that God has given you just because at times it gets hard to do. Stay in it. Stay in it, stay under it, stay in it, keep going forward. And if it requires you to have 2 or 300 people helping you, by all means do that. But hold on and keep going.
Yeah. Just to kind of finish it up, and thank you guys for commenting and being with us in all of this. There was something that I had to do whenever I was rushing for a club or like a Christian version of a fraternity at Harding. And we had to, in the middle of the night, shoulder tractor tires on our backs.
Okay. By yourself?
No.
Oh.
And that's my point, is that, can you imagine somebody saying, I want you to shoulder this tractor tire on your back and run and basically walk back and forth on football field
Yeah.
until you puke and stuff.
Yeah.
The main point of it was, like, we're sitting there together, and as soon as I think that I'm about to break,
How many people
stuff,
were under the tractor tire?
Oh, I mean, you had at least a dozen.
Okay.
At least a dozen.
Okay.
And you know, this is really, really heavy and stuff, but that's the main point. And I think that's kind of what Peter's getting here too. He was never alone in the middle of all of this.
Yeah.
He had his friends, he had the disciples, he had Jesus there for a lot of part of that. And even whenever he was being persecuted, he's getting thrown in jail with his friends, other people that are there shouldering the burden with him. And for me, as we're walking around with these tractor tires, that was the point, was you are not expected to carry any of this burden by yourself.
Yeah.
If we have burdens, we're shouldering them together.
Yeah.
If anything, even if it's a small burden, can we at least like be in this together?
Yeah.
And I think that's the best part about all of this, is that I don't think Jesus expects us to carry the weight of this world, the weight of what it looks like to be a follower of him and to have these burdens of perseverance. He's like, man, that's why we have each other. That's why we have Jesus.
Yeah. But let's keep taking a step forward.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Let's keep,
because even, you know, we were talking about, you know, the failures that Peter had, the denial and everything. When Jesus rises again, has that conversation with Peter, and what does he keep saying to him over and over again? Feed my sheep, feed my lambs, feed my, like, let's keep moving. Okay.
Yeah. Pass is the path.
Yeah. You fell down, back up. Let's keep going. So that's our challenge for you guys. If nothing else, whatever you're dealing with right now, we would love for you to reach out to us. Maybe, you know, you don't want to do it publicly on here. You want to get a hold of us personally and just say, hey, this is something that's going on and I'm struggling, persevering through it. We'd love to have that conversation with you. I don't know that we'll have all the answers, but we'd be more than willing to shoulder that burden with you if we can. Or maybe you know somebody that is really struggling right now. Maybe you can recognize, I need to help somebody else stay under it until they get through it. And would challenge you guys to reach out to somebody else and say, hey, I'm here for you. But let's learn how to persevere and push through so that we can fully experience this life that God's calling us to live.
That's right. Thank you guys for joining us. We'll be with y'all next week.
Yep. See you then.